So this 96, 97 stretch, this is perfect timing leading into Blink
Yeah,
182.
because that was an early project that came when I first got back.
Yeah. So had you heard of Blink prior, or is this a random band that comes across your desk as you're
I,
back
I don't think
at the
hardly
gig?
anybody had heard of Blink prior. You know what I mean? Like, it was pretty new to the record company. It was a little bit like Rick told it. We had created a deal with Cargo Records. That kind of thing was going on a bit then, sort of like Rick said. MCA had done that under the previous regime with Fort Apache, which is a recording studio out of Boston. And actually, a record package that I made for them, I was nominated for a Grammy for that album package for This Is Fort Apache. That was when I left MCA, which is why I was in a really, when I came to Hollywood, I was like, oh, well, kind of celebrated. And then when I came back to MCA, it's kind of like, oh, well, this is our guy who was away for a little bit, but he done some stuff. He did some stuff for us.
He's been nominated for a Grammy. Yeah, for
But
sure.
yeah, and it was kind of interesting with the Blink. I don't really know why the Blink project came to me. I hadn't worked on anything really sort of in that genre, but that's really when that's sort of bubbling up and coming about. I mean, that's when pop punk is really kind of becoming a thing. I was aware of Green Day. I really like the Green Day record. I remember that hearing that, like, when I was on a shoot somewhere. I can't remember what project it was, but I do remember the first time I heard the Green Day Dookie record. Anyway, so the Blink project comes about. I don't think anybody there really knew what it was, and kind of like, and I feel really good about. I feel really good about all those records and this sort of whole contingent of records that I worked on like that. Then I really enjoyed myself a lot and feel like I had my head wrapped around it pretty well. Because kind of like what Rick said, like that could be sort of scary coming into the major label. And I'd like to think that I made that not scary for them. Because I just worked directly with the bands. Like I'd meet them and work with them. It wasn't, what I mean? There wasn't a lot of go in betweens or any of this kind of stuff. And I obviously did get it right off the bat. I mean, I like the Dude Ranch cover probably as much as I like End of the State cover. The record wasn't as huge, but it's just as like right on. It's, you know what I mean? I sort of, I guess I'm sort of appreciating my own work there. And the thing was, I was very much about these records. You know what I mean? Like, these were really clear ideas that I had, which isn't always how it happens, but that is the way I kind of worked on records for them. And especially those two. At End of the State was really, that was not easy. Figuring that out was not easy. It was like a mental puzzle for a long time. Dude Ranch was not as puzzling. I mean, I had two kind of strong ideas right off the bat. And both of them got used. I mean, the first one was exactly what the cover was. And I hired Lou Beach, who's a pretty famous illustrator. I mean, Lou was not a young guy then. He's done a lot of cool stuff. And I knew that he could make this thing that I kind of had in my head. And that's kind of how it went. I mean, I called him up and I described this thing. I don't know if I probably didn't even make a sketch, like I had a lot of faith in him. I knew what his style was like because it's kind of a collage together sort of style, and that cover has that quality. But yeah, I was like, oh yeah, it's a bull with a giant nutsack walking into a, because the whole thing was like, what is a 13-year-old boy going to think is funny as shit? And that's pretty much what drove that. And then sort of the other idea was like a pretty gay cowboy. And we used that for a promotional. I don't know if you've seen that one, the promotional one. It was like, yeah, it's Dude Ranch,
I have always wondered who came up with that. Yeah, the advanced CD, and it's just like that cowboy on the front, like winking.
Exactly. And, they loved it. They were like, it's hilarious. This is great.
So when these ideas start firing off in your head, I mean, did you meet the band once? Did they have any input or start throwing stuff at you? Like, I'm just trying to envision.
They didn't really know what to do, especially like early on. I mean, later on, they have some ideas about some of the kind of things, especially like how they want to be style. When it comes to Take Off Your Pantsuit Jacket, like they wanted to be in black. I know they wanted like sort of a harder edge to it. And I love that. You know what I mean? Like, and that's I think that relationship worked really well because I really did understand them, and I think I proved that to them. You know what I mean? Like, I think if I would have made something that was really like off base, you know, they would have been like, "What the fuck?" You know, like. But it wasn't. It was you know, it was in the pocket for who they are. You know, they're pretty funny. They were really. I mean, they're still really funny, but they were really funny then. You know what I mean?
Was it already called Dude Ranch? Like when this crosses your desk, is it?
Yes. Unlike Enema of the State, Dude Ranch was a title. You know what I mean? So it's like it was literally sprung from that. But you know, simple, kind of clear. You know what I mean? It's really too complicated. It's not only a young audience, but it was a pretty young audience. You know what I mean? I think it like fit their humor. You know what I mean? They make jokes like that on stage. You know, like it's fun. It was very like casual and loose and fun.
Did you listen to that album like in full before, like as you're going through the creative process in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, you're always getting advance copies of stuff, but that was driven by the title. I mean, Dude Ranch was driven by the title of that record.
I've always heard that because some people take that title different ways. I've always heard that it's just kind of like a dude party. Did they explain the title to you, or did you just have to use your own imagination?
No, I didn't need anybody to explain it to me. I mean, you know.
Gotcha. So the bull, an illustrated bull with the massive nutsack facing you, the person picking up the CD, that's what popped in your head right away.
Yeah.
What about the reference on the cowboy? I've always been curious, like, is that a real person? Was that like, where did that person come from?
It was sort of like a retouched stock image. I'm not really sure where it came from. And
Gotcha.
And I think like, you know, we altered it enough that it sort of became a new, you know, sort of a new creation.
There's a font on the inside that one of my buddies says is called Giddy Up.
Yes.
That seems like the most perfect
Your buddy's
font
right.
to use on this. Any specific reasoning behind that, or does it just look westerny?
Well, the record's called Dude Ranch, and you just said it's called Giddy Up. I mean, like, what do you need to, you know?
Not much more to add there.
No, it was like having fun. Do not, you know, not make it too overthought or too serious, especially at that point. You know what I mean? Like, it's still the early days. And I think that was I think originally it was sort of a Cargo MCA release. I think that's how it initially came out, and then it sort of went over to MCA. And it's sort of the very same time as when MCA creates a relationship with Drive Through Records, Richard and Stephanie Rains from Drive Through. And I did lots of stuff for Drive Through and for a bunch of their bands, and not because I needed to. You know, I mean, it wasn't really part of my job. I liked them. I liked their bands. I liked the projects. I mean, it was kind of, you know, like that was kind of a good deal to the record company. You know what I mean? Because I liked doing this stuff. It wasn't like, oh, you know, I don't want to do this, or I only want to do this many things. You know, if you put something interesting in front of me and give me some space, I'll be happy to work on it. And I really enjoyed working with them. You know what I mean? Like they were a blast. They were, you know, doing their part, writing records and having a good time and playing shows.
When you kind of come up with your final design, is it always pending band approval, or
always? Yeah. I mean, it's their record.
Gotcha.
No, this is going to be the cover of your record, whether you like it or not. I mean, like, that wouldn't go over very well. There may be some people that do it that way, but it's not in my experience. It's the way you do that. Understand what you're working on and do a good job on it. You know, you don't always get it right, but I really think in their case, I did get it right. You know what I mean? I think I really understood what was going on there.
Working at MCA at the time, and you know, I always hear about kind of the sellout, and Blink for them, this was their big, you know, first major label release. Were you aware of that at the time? Did it bother you, or are you just paying attention to the art side of things and that doesn't necessarily hit your radar?
Well, the thing is, I really tried to operate, and this was kind of because of like what I do, you know what I mean? Like, I make the art for the band, so I'm working closely with the band, and I'm really more aligned with them. You know, it's not like I'm trying to make something. It's just not how I did things or how it worked, you know. And I was most effective at my job working that way. And like I said, I feel pretty good about making them feel comfortable in that arena with what I was doing. But you could tell the way that Rick was talking about it. Like Rick felt comfortable at MCA. There was kind of a young contingent at MCA at the time, and I sort of hung out with a group. I feel like you mentioned Jay Boberg, but I think Jay had kind of constructed a few of us as almost like a sub group of people working at the label that were sort of working on the, I'd say, younger, cooler kind of projects. We've got Eric Stein, who's in publicity. Rudy Provencio, who's a friend of mine who was in promotion, was kind of in there. So we would sort of meet sometimes as this group of people. I mean, we're all hanging out, you know. I mean, the job is you're out a lot at night seeing shows, and yeah, like that's just kind of part of your job. But I think we helped make them feel comfortable in that arena, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? I don't think it felt like, I mean, obviously it was a giant record company, part of a much more giant record company. But obviously from hearing Rick talk about it, you know what I mean? It was sort of managed with care for them. And I took pride in that stuff, you know what I mean? Like I wasn't trying to be a jerk. I was trying to I wanted them to be happy. I wanted them to like what was going on.
I'm curious, as far as like just the records that are coming out of MCA at the time, like how big is your team, or do you have counterparts, or are you dealing with every single album that's coming out at that time period?
I'm not dealing with every album coming out. There were probably 5 art directors at the time, and I think we had 2 kind of floating assistant people who would help us. I mean, it's about the time that we were in the midst of that. We sort of moved from Universal City. I mean, we were on the lot, and that's where I worked for a long time. And then the company moved to Santa Monica. I moved to Venice Beach just a little bit ahead of that, knowing that the company was about to move there.
With Dude Ranch, Damn It comes out. They're blowing up a little bit. You mentioned that not too many people had heard of Blink prior. Now everybody knows about them. Do you remember hearing that song? Like, did you take some extra pride in the Dude Ranch album cover when that's blowing up?
I still really like that album. Yeah. I liked it. I still like it. You know, it was fun. And also, I mean, like I've worked with a lot of different kinds. I mean, I told you I also do Lyle Lovett's. You know what I mean? And I kind of like that I can have a range of things like that I can do. It's really about kind of understanding what the project is and doing the right, you know, hitting the right tone, the right note for that particular project, and being able to really wrap your head around that. And, you know, also understanding if you can't wrap your head around it or you don't have your head wrapped around it.
Right. Yeah, dude, like the versatility that you have to have and confidence in that, man, like that's a lot.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I mean, it caused me to sort of think about that in a way, but that's the kind of designer that I really try to be, where it's not about me or like a style of doing everything kind of the same way. I'd like to think that sort of intellectually they get solved in a similar way. Like there's a certain kind of mind behind it. That's kind of what I was referring to when I talk about the series of Blink records that I worked on. I mean, I do think that there's like a consistent creative thread, even though they look really different. I think they're like, it's not hard to imagine that they kind of were authored by the same person in a way, especially that group of records started with Dude Ranch, you know, yeah, up to Mark, Tom, Travis show.